Hey there, welcome to our channel. If you're visiting Yellowstone sometime soon and you're hoping to see some wildlife, this video is for you. What you don't want to do is go to Yellowstone and just kind of bump around and hope you run into some wildlife. You might get lucky, but you might not. Um, and certainly there's no way you can guarantee that you're going to have wildlife sightings. But in this video, I'm going to show you 4 places that you can go to hopefully increase your chances of seeing some wildlife that you want to see. A lot of people want to see bears, wolves, elk, bison, things like that. And so we're going to go over some of those tips here. My wife and I have put together a little channel. We're trying to help people, we're trying to give people information to help them on their vacations to the west, to the Rockies, the Rocky Mountain region. We're starting here with Yellowstone and Grand Teton National Parks, and we'll expand to other areas as well. But our goal here, again, just to hopefully help make your trip planning a little easier. We just find on YouTube there's so many times there's not very good information. There's a lot of lists and things like that, but not real great information. Also, we're putting together some itineraries and some audio guides, so check back with us if you're going to Yellowstone next year, 2021, or sometime after that. Then check us out. Hopefully we'll have our information or our stuff available by then. Okay, let's get to the map. Okay, so here's a map of Yellowstone. It's laid out in basically 2 loops, the upper and the lower loop. These are rather large loops. If you were to just drive around them, it takes about 2.5 hours each, depending on traffic, of course. So the first site, or the first place that is probably the most common place to see wildlife, we'll zoom in here, is this area over here, Hayden Valley. Hayden Valley, named after a fellow named Ferdinand Hayden, who was one of the first to explore Yellowstone National Park. He was sent out here by the government. Government paid. He had a group with them, and basically they were kind of looking into all these stories that people had been telling, like these mountain fur trappers had been telling about this crazy place that had water shooting out of the ground and steam and all that. So he came out here. So this valley is named after Ferdinand Hayden. This is probably the most popular place to see wildlife because it is this really large, gorgeous valley. It has the Yellowstone River running through it, and bison herds will just hang out here. You'll see elk. I've seen grizzly bears over there occasionally. And since it's on the loop, it's located, on this loop that people tend to drive. I mean, generally, people will do a loop in a day. You'll end up driving through it. And so, very popular place, beautiful area. Number 1 spot to observe wildlife in Yellowstone is Hayden Valley. The number 2 spot is Lamar Valley. Out here, this is basically another large valley on this road out here that goes from the Tower Junction, out, and it leaves the park here on the east side. That road ends up going over Beartooth Highway out to Red Lodge, Montana. Really gorgeous area. This actually is more, people like Lamar Valley more than Hayden Valley. But and there's more wildlife there. But it's not quite as visited because the majority of people will stay in Gardner, Montana, up here, or West Yellowstone. By far the majority stay in West Yellowstone, actually, but then some people will stay in Gardner as well. But because so many people stay in West Yellowstone, they tend to come in and do these 2 loops, but it's really hard to get all the way out here to Lamar Valley and all the way back to West Yellowstone in one day. It's maybe doable, but it's a lot of driving. 3 hours out there maybe. So it's not quite as visited as Hayden Valley is, but there are more wolves up there. Um, Again, big bison herds will hang out there. More grizzlies. This is really probably the number one spot for grizzlies is Lamar Valley. The grizz hang out here the most, and the wolves hang out here the most. And so Lamar Valley, by the way, named after a guy named Lucius Quintus Cincinnatus Lamar, who was the Secretary of the Interior. He had no real connection to the park, but he was a government guy when they were naming that river, when somebody found that river, the Lamar River. And so his name ends up getting out here on the park. It's kind of a strange story. Anyway, just kind of difficult to get out there from West Yellowstone, but if you were staying in Gardner up here, you should definitely make your way out to Lamar Valley. Spend a day out there at least, checking out the wildlife and the beautiful scenery there. Okay, the next spot that nobody really seems to talk about much is this area here on this northern road that goes from Mammoth Hot Springs over to Tower. And that area is called the Northern Range. In fact, they have a hike. I'm going to zoom in here on this. They have a little walkway called the Forces of the Northern Range right there. And on the Yellowstone app, the official Yellowstone app, you can download a little audio tour of the Forces of the Northern Range. This is just a little walk. Anyway, this area is really quite underrated for wildlife. I have seen probably more black bears there than in other places in the park. And I know that my friend went there this year, saw a black bear there. And also I'm aware, so there's bears there, and Yellowstone says that 40 to 50% of the wolves hang out in that area. So you've got maybe a shot to see a wolf as well. Wolves are a little bit harder to spot in Yellowstone. I think there's about 80 in the park, so there's not a ton, but you might get lucky in those two spots up there in the northern area. And then elk hang out a lot just in this whole area. I mean, you'll see elk just in town at Mammoth Hot Springs, but also, you know, they're in this area here on the Northern Range as well. So there's a good, I mean, you look, if you go to Mammoth, you're going to see elk. You're guaranteed to see elk. But just all along that Northern Range, you know, you have an option, a hope or a chance to see some bears, and maybe even some wolves. The wolves, by the way, introduced into Yellowstone, reintroduced, I should say, in the 1990s. The wolves had been hunted out of Yellowstone a long time ago. I believe in the 1930s they had been hunted out to extinction, or well, hunted out of the park. And the problem is it caused the elk herds to get out of control, and then they kind of trampled a lot of the vegetation, and it just kind of caused this cycle that was really, you know, problematic. And so they reintroduced wolves to help keep the elk population down, and it's been a raving success. There was a lot of controversy when they did it, but it's been a huge success for the park and for just the cycle of life and the whole ecosystem. Okay, so that's the third spot. So we got 1 at Hayden Valley, 2 at Lamar Valley, 3 the Northern Range. And then the fourth spot that I've seen quite a bit of wildlife is this Madison River area. This seems to get a little forgotten about. And it's just right there at the west entrance. So everybody drives on this. Well, not everybody, but I mean everybody who stays in West Yellowstone, which is the majority of people, will drive on that road going along the Madison River. There's a little valley there. It's a pretty area. There's big boulders that you can see have fallen down from the walls there. And there'll be a lot of times bison walking out, trying to kind of get out of the park or something. It's kind of funny. It seems like they're trying to escape the park. Of course, there's no fences. Bison can come and go as they want. But last time we were there, we had a bison walking on the road. There's a lot of times you'll see elk out there. And last time we were there, we saw some coyotes. So it is a decent spot for seeing wildlife. this Madison River. By the way, Madison River named after James Madison, who was the 4th president of the United States, but it was named after him by Lewis and Clark. As they came out to this area, they didn't come to Yellowstone. They saw Madison at a different place and named it Madison because he was the Secretary of State at the time, but he's most famous for crafting the Constitution of the United States. So there's all these stories hidden in the map here on these names, and that's one of the things we're hoping to get out there with our audio guide, is some of these stories to help people kind of understand and appreciate the park. Okay, so that's the 4th place that is a pretty good place to see wildlife. Now, you're going to see bison anywhere you go in the park. I mean, the whole geyser basins, there are many geyser basins down here. Even the buffalo even hang out around the geyser basins. So, excuse me, what you're really trying to get to is the areas that you might see some of these other animals: elk, wolves, bears, grizzly, coyotes, all that kind of thing. So, and then, you know, keep an eye out too as you're around the rivers for birds. There's some amazing birds that you'll find there at Yellowstone. Now, finally, the key here to seeing wildlife, and again, there's no guarantees, okay, but the key here is to get there early at dusk, or to stay late. At dawn, or to stay late until dusk. You want to be there during the cool times of the day. The animals really are much more active during those times. So if you can get there during those times, that's a big deal. Now, that kind of makes it difficult to get all the way out to Lamar here or Hayden here if you're staying in West Yellowstone, because it takes you over an hour to drive out there, maybe even more than that. So, but if you get there super early in the park, the crowds aren't near as bad, the roads are much less congested, and you can get to those places much faster. So that's the key there, is to get there at the right times of the day. Okay, I hope that was helpful for you. If it was, we have a whole nother video that you might want to watch that we did about Yellowstone, where we gave a lot of tips, kind of give a whole overview of the park and the places to see and places to stay and all that stuff. So we'll put a link to that here. Please check that out. If you got any value out of this, please subscribe to our channel, and then let us know if you have any other questions or if there's places where you've seen wildlife that we've missed. Okay, thanks.